Coordinator at the Civic Garden Center.
And I'm Ellie, the Youth Education Coordinator. Our organization is on a mission to help people learn to take care of our environment and the creatures that live in it. Today, we want to talk to you about one special aspect of our work, and that is why we are dressed in these special suits. Can you guess what these suits are for? If you look between us, you'll see a clue.
Well, you can probably guess by now that we are beekeepers from this hive that's right in the middle of us. And we've been taking care of honeybees at the Civic Garden Center for the past 5 years with our hive here, and also an observation hive at our green learning station that has glass panes that allow you to have a peek into the world of honeybees and inside of their home called a beehive.
Today we are going to get up close and personal with these flying friends to show you how important bees and other pollinators are for our environment and why humans rely on them for our food. So, first, let's talk about that word I mentioned, pollinators.
Bees are part of a group of many different animals known as pollinators. As pollinators, these animals help plants with flowers make fruits and seeds. Animals like butterflies, bats, moths, ants, beetles, and bees make up just some of the pollinators of the world. And these pollinators do important work called pollination. If you look closely at a flower, you can see that it has many small parts. On the top of the stamen of a flower are tiny grains of pollen like a sticky dust. Pollinators visit flowers to eat their nectar and pollen, and since that pollen is so sticky, it often sticks to the pollinator's body. Once that flying pollinator goes to another flower, if any pollen from its body falls off onto the flower and specifically onto the pistil, then that pollen will pollinate the flower. That flower can now grow seeds, or if it is a fruit-producing plant like an apple tree or a tomato plant, then after being pollinated, the fruit begins to grow with the seeds inside.
Seeds are how most plants reproduce, so for many plants, without the help of pollinators, they would not grow seeds and therefore not reproduce. Think about all the plants we eat, different fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds. 1 out of every 3 bites of food was only possible through pollination. So next time you take a bite of food, you might want to thank a pollinator. Bees are very efficient pollinators. Like all pollinators, bees have co-evolved with flowers, so their bodies are adapted to make them very specialized pollinators for specific flowers. Pollinators choose what flower to go to based on their color, shape, size, scent, and time of bloom. Bees are no exception. Bees have favorite flowers just like we have our favorite foods. See these eyes? Bees have very large compound eyes for the size of their bodies and see higher colors of the human light spectrum plus ultraviolet colors. They cannot see red. They tend to prefer blue, purple, and yellow flowers that have a sweet scent and a large landing pad for their bodies.
Since bees are active during the day, they only pollinate flowers that bloom in the daytime, like the ones right behind me. Because of their long tongue called a proboscis, bees can reach nectar way down in tubular-shaped flowers. Bees are the main pollinators of many of the crops we know, like apples, almonds, squash, melons, cucumbers, cranberries, blueberries, beans, peas, and a lot more. Some of these foods, like almonds, wouldn't even exist without bees to pollinate them.
Bees are a type of pollinator closely related to wasps and ants, and as we just learned, they are pollinator champions. There are over 20,000 species of bees around the world, and they can be found on every continent except for Antarctica. In the US, there are 4,000 species of bees. When we think of bees, we most often think of honeybees and their hives. But did you know most bees are solitary creatures that live alone? Most bees actually nest in tunnels underground. Some live in dead tree trunks or branches, while certain species like mason bees make nests out of mud. There are even leafcutter bees that use leaf fragments to construct their nests. You can make or buy a pollinator house to help these solitary bees find places to nest since their habitat is shrinking due to human activities. While most bees live alone, there are a few types of bees that live in colonies like sweat bees, bumblebees, and honeybees. Since honeybees are so well known and we take care of them here at the Civic Garden Center, let's take a closer look at their life cycle and how a hive functions.
The body of a honeybee, like other animals, changes throughout its lifetime. There are 4 stages in the life cycle of a honeybee: egg, larva, pupa, and adult. Since honeybees live communally in hives, much of their life cycle is spent inside the hive. Eggs are laid in individual honeycomb cells and look like a small grain of rice. In about 3 days, the larva hatches from the egg and looks like a white grub. The larva then eats and grows bigger to fill the cell, and its body begins to change again as it becomes a pupa. The cell is capped over with wax, and the pupa forms legs, eyes, wings, and all the other structures of an adult bee body. Finally, the bee eats through the wax cap and emerges as an adult, ready to be put to work for the hive for the rest of its life cycle.
A large honeybee colony is an impressive sight. One colony can hold 10,000 to 60,000 bees. The most common honeybee is the European honeybee, scientific name Apis mellifera, and that is the type of honeybee we have at CGC. There are 3 types of honeybees in a hive, and they each have specific jobs in the colony. The queen bee is the only female bee in the hive that reproduces. Her sole job is to lay eggs. She lays on average 1,500 eggs per day. You can easily spot the queen bee because she has a much longer abdomen and is larger than the other bees. She also has a group of bees following her around, attending to her needs.
Most of the bees in a hive are worker bees, and they're all females. The job of worker bees is to collect pollen and nectar from plants for food. As you just learned, by collecting pollen and nectar while moving from plant to plant, they're performing the important work of pollination that allows plants to reproduce. Once they collect the pollen and nectar, they take it back to the hive to make honey, an important food source for the colony throughout the winter. The worker bees also clean the hive and tend to offspring. Finally, there are male bees called drones in the colony. They are only in the hive for a few months out of the year because their job is to mate with queen bees to spread the genes of their colony. Each day they will leave the hive in search of a queen bee with which they can mate. The drones are easy to spot because they are bigger than a worker bee and have larger eyes that almost surround their entire head. Unlike the queen and worker bees, drones do not have stingers, so you don't have to worry about getting stung by them.
Speaking of stingers, our flying friend the honeybee often gets a bad reputation because of their ability to sting. However, unlike wasps or hornets, honeybees are very mild-mannered and not aggressive. While there's a chance you could get stung by a honeybee, they don't want to sting you because they know they will die if they do. They will only sting when they feel like they are being threatened. To protect yourself, watch where you step if you're in an area with flowers, and steer clear of their hive. You can leave the hive work to beekeepers who wear these special protective suits when working with them. Let's talk more about beekeeping and why we take care of honeybees.
Beekeeping, also known as apiculture, is the occupation of maintaining honeybee hives in order to collect honey and other products that the bees create in the hive, like beeswax, pollen, and royal jelly. Many beekeepers will keep bees for pollinating crops, and some will keep them for selling starter kits known as nukes to other beekeepers who want to get started with their own hives. Beekeepers maintain these colonies in man-made hives, and one man-made hive is called a Langstroth hive, which is the most popular type of honeybee hive and the one that we have here at the Civic Garden Center. Now, this type of hive is made up of boxes with vertical frames inside where the worker bees can use honeycomb for storing honey, and the queen can use those combs for laying eggs. And in a Langstroth hive, at the bottom you have an entrance where the honeybees can come and go as they go out to forage for pollen and nectar from flowers to make honey.
Not all bees make honey, but honeybees do because it is their main source of food. Beekeepers tend to hives to give bees a safe place to live, but also to encourage them to create a little more honey than they need so that we can keep the extras for ourselves. So how do bees make that delicious honey we love so much? It all starts with collecting nectar from flowers. Bees fly from flower to flower to collect the sugary liquid that's nectar that flowers produce to attract pollinators. The bees will store the nectar in their second stomach to take back to a hive. There's a special mixture in the bee's stomach called digestive enzymes that do the work to break down nectar into a thicker substance. Now, this is the part that gets a little gross. To help with the process of breaking down the nectar, a bee will throw up the contents of its stomach into the mouth of another bee, who will then do the same with another bee, and so on. So basically, honey is bee vomit. This may sound gross, but it's a genius way to make that nectar thick enough to become honey. Once a bee finally dispenses its nectar mixture into a honeybee comb, many bees will fan it with their wings to dry out the extra water in the mixture, leaving only a thick, sticky goo that we know as honey. Finally, they will cap off the honey cell with wax to store it until they're ready to use it as food. Bees must visit 2 million flowers just to make 1 pound of honey.
What's fascinating about honey is that if its properties aren't changed, it can stay good forever. Archaeologists have actually found pots of perfectly preserved honey when they were excavating pyramids in Egypt that dates back to 3,000 years ago. It's pretty impressive. Honey tends to be sweeter than table sugar, and it's also highly nutritious. It contains a lot of vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. And the color and flavor of honey can change depending on the time of year that it was harvested. Honey that's created in the spring tends to be lighter in color and flavor, and that's all because of the types of flowers that are blooming at that time of year. So in our region, we have flowers in the spring like hyacinths, borage, crocus, and lilacs. And then in the fall, the honey tends to be darker in color and has a stronger flavor due to the flowers that are in bloom then, like goldenrod, purple asters, and sunflowers. To collect honey from a hive, beekeepers use a tool called a honey extractor. You first remove excess honeycomb from the frames and put the frames into the extractor to spin out the honey. You then can use a strainer to separate the honey from the honeycomb. The honeycomb can be melted down for other uses like creating beeswax candles, lip balm, or even beeswax wrap that is a great alternative to plastic for storing your food.
There is so much to know about pollinators. Since we've focused on honeybees, what are 3 important gifts we get from them? Three important gifts we get from honeybees are many of the fruits and vegetables we eat, seeds to grow more plants, and honey and beeswax from the hive. You've learned a lot about bees with us today. They are pretty amazing, right? They are also important. We talked about how bee pollination is the reason we have so many of the foods we eat. They help pollinate a wide diversity of plants beyond just the plants that we humans eat. Those plants are a food source for other animals, which in turn are a food source for other animals. So bees support the survival of a lot of living things. Bees are also an indicator species, which means they are often the first to be affected when there is something wrong in the environment. If we pay attention to bees, we'll know quickly if there is a problem with their habitat. If we solve that problem, that gives us the opportunity to protect many other living things that share the same habitat. Bees are an important piece of a healthy ecosystem.
You can help make sure that bees are around to do their important jobs by doing a few things. First, you can plant a garden with a wide range of plants that bees and other pollinators will love. You can also get some delicious food out of your garden. Also, please don't use pesticides or other chemicals in your lawns, gardens, or yards because they're harmful to bees and other pollinators. And finally, leave some natural spaces in your yard with tall plant stalks or piles of sticks for any native bees to find and home.
We encourage you to visit a green space near you or walk around our grounds to see pollinators in action. We even have a scavenger hunt for you to do if you visit our website at civicgardencenter.org.
We hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new about bees today. And if you take anything away today, remember, be friendly to the bees.